Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is the Abundant Alchemist helping you make as much money as possible and get free by curating information, as much information as possible in a day. So, before we get into Bitcoin and Ethereum, let's talk about GameStop and what is happening. As you can see, GameStop surged from about $111 all the way up to about 430, 450, 460 in a day. Since trading has ceased and been put to a stop on many platforms, including Robinhood, by the FCC. And I wanted to get into the Cantillon Effect and how this all ties into what's going on. If you go to mattstoller.subtract.com/p/the-cantillon with two L's -effect -y-wall -street, you can read this article, The Cantillon Effect, Why Wall Street Gets a Bailout and You Don't. Okay, I'm going to just get into the meat and potatoes here. Time is of the essence. Time is crypto. 3 weeks ago, the government passed, this was April, okay, 2020. 3 weeks ago, the government passed a giant multi-trillion-dollar bailout. Supposedly, it was money for a host of stakeholders, including hospitals, states, Wall Street banks, big business, unemployed, and the small business sector. Today, the Federal Reserve, built on top of Congress's framework, announced another multi-trillion dollar set of facilities on top of what is already put out in order to help cities, states, small businesses, Main Street businesses, so on and so forth. So what's happened so far? This is today's change in stock price of real estate venture run by one of the largest private equity funds in the world. So if you could see what was going on at that moment in April, stocks went up for this trust 35%. Okay, 35% jump in a day, that's a lot for Wall Street. It's something that we generally yawn at in the crypto space, but so the reason that the stock skyrocketed is because investors believe new measures from the Federal Reserve will bail out the debt of this private equity fund. Private equity fund. There's a monetary bazooka aimed at the economy, and we see that happening right now. They're going to print more bills, right? And yet there's a puzzle. If there's money for the entire economy, why is it that normal people and small businesses can't access unemployment insurance and lending programs? To put it another way, why is the money meant for everyone only showing up in the stock market? Reason is because money has to travel through institutions. Right now, institutions for the powerful function well, and those for the rest of us are rickety and broken. So money gets to the rich first. Eventually, some money will get to the rest of us, but in the interim period before that money fully circulates, the wealthy can use their access of money to buy up physical or financial assets. Let's go into history. In the 18th century, French banker and philosopher named Richard Cantillon noticed an early version of this phenomenon in a book he wrote called An Essay on Economic Theory. His basic theory was that who benefits when the state prints a bunch of money is based on the institutional setup of that state. In the 18th century, this meant that the closer you were to the king and the wealthy, the more you benefited. And the further away you were, the more you were harmed. Money, in other words, is not neutral. This general observation that money printing has distributional consequences that operate through the price system is known as the Cantillon Effect. Cantillon. In Cantillon's day, the basis of money was gold. So he wrote about what happened when a nation state discovered a gold mine in its territory. Increasing the amount of gold in the realm would not just increase price levels, he observed, but would change who had wealth and who hadn't. This is why we're talking about the greatest shift and transfer of wealth. It's happening right underneath your noses, and a lot of people are asleep right now. So as he put it, doubling the quantity of money in the state, the prices of products and merchandise are not always doubled. The river, quote unquote, which runs and winds about in its bed, will not flow with double the speed when the amount of water is doubled, right? So in other words, just by pumping more money into the economy, like the Fed is doing, doesn't necessarily mean that the people who actually need it the most will get it faster. Cantillon went on to discuss how money would flow, basically noting that the rich people near the mine would spend it on 18th century luxuries like servants and meat pies, prompting a general rise in prices. Eventually, the money would get out to the populace, but until it did, working people would have to pay higher prices without access to the new money that mine owners had. So there would be inflation with uneven distribution of purchasing power. This is what they don't tell you when they're printing their money. Sounds great. A lot of people, I'm sure, voted for the new administration because of his promises, but the general public does not understand how this is all really working out. Okay, there's also a China angle. Cantillon noted that a kingdom discovering gold would in the long run erode its own manufacturing base, that the non-neutrality of money also had geopolitical consequences. Here's how he put it. When an overabundance of money from the mines had diminished the number of inhabitants in the state, accustomed those who remain to excessive expenditures, raised the prices of farm products, so people began becoming comfortable with a certain standard of living, raised the prices of farm products and the wages for labor to high levels, and ruined the manufacturers of the state by the purchase of foreign products by property owners and mine workers. The money produced by the mines will necessarily go abroad to pay for the imports, pay for the luxuries, and hurting the home economy. I'm adding along as I'm reading, right? Please read along with me. This will gradually impoverish the state and make it, in a way, dependent on foreigners to whom it is obliged to send money every year as it is extracted from the mines. Now, what is going on right now? You see a whole lot of real estate being purchased, presumably, I would say, by China, right? A lot of real estate is being bought up by China here. Look up the numbers. Do your own research. But if you connect the dots, you see what's going on. The great circulation of money, which was widespread in the beginning, ceases. Poverty and misery follow, and the exploitation of the mines appears to be only advantageous to those employed in them and to the foreigners who profit thereby. So, whoever's controlling the money, whoever's close to these federal jobs, state jobs, the cabinet, the administration, will be the ones who mainly benefit. This is approximately what has happened to Spain since the discovery of the Indies. As for the Portuguese, since the discovery of gold mines in Brazil, they have nearly always used foreign articles and manufactured goods, right? Really good for the country that is selling all these articles and manufactured goods to Brazil, not that good for Brazil and Brazil's economy. And it seems that they worked the mines only for the account and advantage of foreigners. Now, what's happening right now? Our production is going down. We're more and more reliant on countries outside to sell us their goods. What's going on with taxes? They're telling you to tax the rich, tax corporations in order to help the country get out of this debt, when in fact they're the ones that created this debt in the first place. So what you're going to do is you're going to destroy the corporations that create the economy that would otherwise flourish if the system was free, and it would benefit the general populace. But now we're purchasing from abroad, and in the end, there's only going to be 2 or 3 companies that will function in this country. All the gold and silver that these two states extract from the mines does not supply them with more precious metal in circulation than others. England and France usually have even more. This dynamic is exactly what happened with the United States since the 1960s. If you replace the idea of gold mines with the ability to print dollars, in 1971, Keynesian economist Nicholas Caldor said the dollar hegemony would turn a nation of creative producers into a community of rentiers increasingly living on others, seeking gratification in ever more useless consumption with all the debilitating effects of the bread and circuses of imperial Rome. Now, this is why I have never been too big on entertainment like movies and sports. Because you see, they're taking the playbook from Rome and just repeating it, and people are just falling for it. We're slaves, and as long as we have bread and circus, generally, we're happy. So today, what Cantillon observed is far more extreme than it was in the 1960s. It is hedge funds, private equity, and bankers who have benefited from the money printing, and the foreigners who benefit from our money printing are increasingly Chinese and foreign manufacturers. Hello? What's the problem? What just happened? Why did they just call time out? Because these companies are suffering when they were shorting the GameStop stock, and people came in and bought it, and they said, time out, time out. No, 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 that's not fair, right? When it goes against their interests, they call foul. But when the people are suffering, it's fair game. This story doesn't imply that money creation is always biased towards the powerful, only that how money travels matter. There's no inherent money neutrality, such as neutrality must be constructed by institutional arrangements. Much of the New Deal in the 1930s and 40s was designed to build alternative channels for lending so that small business, industry, and individuals could have access to money as quickly as big banks. Now, this is why I am so bullish on crypto, in particular the sector of DeFi, decentralized finance. Crypto such as REN, synthetics, Uniswap. I mean, I could get into that in another video. The Reconstruction Finance Corporation, government procurement, the Federal Housing Administration, Federal Reserve, agricultural credit supports, federal home loan banks, credit unions, and regulations like Regulation Q were all mechanisms to ensure the flow of money would be neutral. The International Monetary Fund was originally created to ensure money neutrality on a global basis. So what happened? We can now see that the hollowing out of, or subversion of these institutions since the 1980s is designed to ensure they would be non-neutral and tilted towards the powerful. Since 1981, shout out to all of my 80s babies, increasingly the only channels that work to move money creation are the Federal Reserve to Wall Street, as well as the backstop to mortgages, who could get money to new home buyers through mortgage lenders. Housing has been a key driver in both recession and recoveries for a lot of reasons, but also for a simple one. It's one of the few ways to get money into the hands of normal people in America at scale. The Federal Reserve has usually seen its role as printing money and distributing it to the economy, largely by moving money to banks and assuming they will in turn increase the amount of money available to everyone else equally. The 2008 crisis jarred that vision of neutral and frictionless money movement because it became obvious that institutions matter. In 2016, Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen gave an important speech on this topic. It turns out, she said, that who the Fed deals with matters. To paraphrase her speech, the bigger and powerful get money first, and the small and weak get money last. That's the dynamic we're seeing in this bailout, with small businesses and the unemployed having trouble accessing funds, and the big guys getting what they need when they need it. If you want the boring version of the speech, here's a paragraph of Yellen explaining that the Fed economists were stupid and intellectually corrupt, but doing it so that anyone listening would fall asleep rather than get outraged. So I'm not going to get into that. And I have spoken not so nicely about her because of her fear and disinformation on Bitcoin. And she has since changed her tune. Seems like maybe she benefited from a lower price in it. But in any case, it seems like she's for the people on this topic. Saying heterogeneous just means that the powerful and the powerless get and use money differently. In other words, Yellen was observing in part the Cantillon Effect. And this brings us to today's bailout and the meaning of institutions. Large banks, private equity corporations, and foreign central banks get dollars through the capital markets by trading bonds and stocks. In turn, it turns out that the Federal Reserve is very good at working in these markets and can move trillions of dollars relatively quickly. So that's why the real estate arms of the largest private equity funds in the world are skyrocketing today. That was April 2020. They know that the Fed turned the spigot on and that the spigot, the faucet, the funnel of water is instant and functional. How convenient for the large institutions. However, the Small Business Administration, unlike institutions in the 30s and 40s, does not have the workforce or ability to make direct loans to businesses. They have to guarantee loans made by banks, who in turn are supposed to make loans. Or that's the theory, but in America, commercial lending institutions have hollowed out dramatically. Neither the banks nor SBA nor anyone else have the people to originate loans. We can't do it. And our unemployment offices aren't much better. The only functional bureaucracy that touches business and people is the IRS. There's a bunch of aspects of the Cantillon effect that I don't know how to translate. This is not an inflationary moment. The money printing is happening in a moment of severe deflation. So the issue is not the price that prices will rise, though of course they could. I don't really agree with what he's saying here. And we do see shortages in certain products, which is a form of inflation. I suspect purchasing power will matter more in who can afford to hold financial assets, not who can afford meat pies and servants. But the basic outline of the Cantillon effect, that some people have more purchasing power and others have less in the same economy, if the channels of money creation make it so, is still operative. So this has been going on since like the 1800s. And you mean to tell me that people in power aren't aware of this? Where was the rush to fix this? There was no rush to fix this. Why? And this is why it's so important to own assets, in particular crypto, in my humble opinion. Not telling you what to do with your money, I'm just telling you what I do with mine. And that's the lesson we're learning in this bailout. If we want to be able to expand and reduce the money supply in a way that doesn't benefit the already powerful and hurt everyone else, we have to have institutions that do so. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that what we need is a form of technology like blockchain that will be able to distribute this wealth, because if you allow the same people that have let this go on forever try to fix it, I don't have faith that they'll do it in a satisfactory way. There are many policies designed to fix this, including getting every American a debit card, as Rep. Rashida Tlaib suggests, or using the IRS as a mechanism to extend payroll support to businesses, as Senator Josh Hawley seeks. Yeah, sure, give the IRS more power. They're not even a government entity, they're private. So give this private sector more power on what's going on with a country. That sounds great. With the technology we have today, moving money neutrally is in an industrial economy like ours should be pretty simple and undertaking. Our policymakers just have to decide to do it. Yeah, they're not in a rush. Why would they? They're doing fine. They're taking vacation. They're going to the hairdresser, and they're telling us not to. So, this is the big middle finger right here to the large institutions. And now you understand why they stopped allowing this to trade on platforms like Robinhood. And since it's gone down $97, which goes in line with what the large institutions wanted because they were shorting this stock. They were betting on this going down to zero and making huge amounts of money. And this candle right here still is ensuring that that does not happen. It's a beautiful thing, I think. Let's move on to Bitcoin. Being told to whisper. If you guys are parents, you know that, okay, so Bitcoin dominance has fallen to 63. The altcoin market season is here. So let's look at Bitcoin and what it's doing. Bitcoin is pretty much moving sideways, which is what we want to happen so that altcoins can rocket. Does not mean that Bitcoin is going to dump to zero. It does not mean that the bull run is over for Bitcoin. It just means it's kind of consolidating and playing around in this area. And that's what we want in order to make big money with alternative coins. Right? We just want this sideways action. Now, Ethereum is at 1346, pretty much doing the same. We expect it to go a little bit lower, maybe in these next 3 days, before it goes up. I'm bullish on Ethereum and Litecoin in particular. I have to cut this short. Baby's awake. Have a great day.